My mom, she is a daily user of Facebook, and she was complaining to me about Instagram because she's like, I cannot even read the content, it just goes through. She was talking about stories.
Oh, wow.
She didn't know it was stories. So it's really hard for generations that are locked in specific ways of interacting with a platform to move into the next.
Influencer marketing has grown with the different generations, and some of them trust it more than others.
A lot of influencers that beforehand could get away with anything and everything have been more and more exposed. An influencer in the health and well-being from Australia that was able to monetize from a story that she completely made up, and the truth came out. You cannot get away with everything. Like literally people have access to information way more than before.
Influencer marketing is also experiencing a downfall to some level. Hence, UGC or user generated content, that's gaining more and more traction, and that's going to be like the next marketing model. Do you agree to it?
The reason why we got into influencer marketing is because a lot of these influencers were generating content. The UGC, the generation of the content from an influencer's point of view, or from a content creator as we call them, is kind of like the first step into then seeking or being eligible to be part of a sponsorship for a brand. Getting closer to younger generations is very important. I have to say, for me, it was a huge surprise to discover how different from whatever I was imagining they are. I thought I would have found people who are lazier, who are putting first themselves and putting first their free time, when actually I found extremely hard workers who are very flexible, very problem-solving oriented.
Welcome to the Z-Way. We are joined today by Sara Gentil, who has 15 years of experience in tech, more than 20 years of experience for work across different generations. She worked for Facebook, Amazon, and currently she's leading TikTok Live at the MENAT region, where she looks at the branding, engagement, and social media. So Sara, with her experience, has seen all the digital transformation come to life across different generations. She worked in social media content creation, engagement, where Gen Zs are fast-paced, millennials are just building on the online culture. She's seen how Gen Zs have evolved into the memes and their slangs, and then the millennials probably have really didn't want to do a lot of scrolling to find that information. She's been part of setting up a lot of that digital transformation across different companies. She says that she is on the line with both Gen Zs and the millennials. We have a name for it, Sara. It's called Zillennial. So you're a Zillennial, because she enjoys what Gen Zs do with their fast pace and then their actually impact and their thrive for authenticity. But at the same time, she also enjoys the structure that the millennials would bring into the workplace. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
very
you for
happy
having
to
me.
have you here. We're very excited to really know what's coming on the social media side, the content creation, a lot of towards the consumption, the platforms. So there's so much to really dive into. But can you walk us through, for example, the social media evolution, right? From MySpace to Facebook, I'm a Facebook era, to the TikTok and Be Real and other platforms.
Absolutely.
So what's your experience with that?
Absolutely. I think we're one of the generation that has experience with all of them.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, the cat is out of the bag. When you mentioned 20 years of experience, we already knew that.
Yeah.
The age is that, and I'm just, pretending to be a millennial and appropriating myself of some of the traits of the Gen Z. But yeah, we're one of the generation that literally has gone through everything. I still remember back in the days, MySpace, where people were trying to connect with other people with the same interest. It was new, it was exciting. For the first time, we were connecting to the internet, still through the phone line, trying to figure which community we wanted to belong, and also how we could reach with our thoughts and with our talents or anything that we wanted to share, people that were outside of our circle. I come from a village of 4,000 people, so for me, internet was really the first window outside into the world.
Okay.
And now we actually find that everything that we put out there gets to everyone. Like I remember a few years ago when TikTok just started, literally, you were extremely likely to post something and have thousands or hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. So the early times, the early stages of TikTok, literally people could become famous overnight. It still happens, but a little bit less. What I believe has happened over time has been a roller coaster of moving close and far from authenticity.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Wow.
at the very beginning, through MySpace, people were they were really trying to put themselves out there. Then when Facebook came, you were connecting first. I remember it was 2006. I was studying in France, and some of my friends who traveled to the US invited me to this thing, Facebook. And I thought, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, no one knew about Zuckerberg. No one knew about everything that was around Facebook. We just thought, this is cool. I can keep in touch with my classmates, even if after school we are all going into our own ways. So it was a really way for staying in touch. And then Instagram came, which added a little bit more of the glam that people want to portray about their lives. I remember when it started, it was mostly for photos, for pictures. And then people started finding the angle of showing off a little bit. And by the way, I am people. I do the same. So I'm not judging anyone. I'm just saying,
became like lifestyle reflection.
It's a pure lifestyle. And you can see also that at some point, the route that Instagram took was completely different from Facebook. Like to these days, people from Gen Z barely use Facebook.
We
and
don't,
the ones who do, by the way, they do it to stay in touch with their families, where a lot of older people like boomers and even some millennials still use Facebook to keep in touch. So that beginning of Facebook, that was to create connections and then evolved into building communities, sort of remains true. My mom, she is 72. She is a daily user of Facebook, and she was complaining to me about Instagram because she's like, I cannot even read the content, it just goes through. She was talking about stories. She didn't know it was stories, so she just see these things moving, and she's like, I
this
cannot
is an
read.
advertisement, I want to see it.
And how can I stop it? How can I read it? It's really hard for generations that are locked in specific ways of working, specific ways of interacting with a platform to move into the next. And I think, without taking anything away from the Gen X, the Gen Z, that when it comes to us millennials who started without even mobile phones, my first mobile phone was this big. We are a little bit more agile in moving across different platforms, in adapting, but still we cannot take away that attachment that we have to the way we have been coming up and growing up. So that's why I'm really happy to be here with you, because I'm so interested also in learning more from different generations and growing.
Very good.
Right.
I mean, we speak about impact across generations because we believe that you currently lead a team of different generations, right? And then we believe through the impact across generations is that the Z-Way is a platform to allow everybody to voice out what they're currently facing, so we can get ready for the future. So with that being said, and with your mom's example of scrolling, I mean, is there like a trust currently with the current new generations on influencer marketing versus the previous traditional style of marketing? Because you spoke about a lot of trends that different generations have or their use. But influencer marketing has grown with the different generations, and some of them trust it more than others. So what's your input on that?
I think there has been lately an exposure of the truth. Like a lot of influencers that beforehand could get away with anything and everything have been more and more exposed. Just recently, I was looking at a documentary on Netflix about an influencer in the health and well-being from Australia that was able to monetize massively from a story that she completely made up, and the truth came out. Now, there are positives and negatives with the accessibility to all this knowledge. On one side, you really give space to new professional figures like the influencers, the content creators to thrive. For me, it's a skill. Like, not everyone can be a content creator. Not everyone can be an influencer. It's really a talent. You must have charisma. It's a lot of work of editing and preparing the content behind.
Yeah, for sure.
On the other side, you cannot get away with everything. Like, literally, people have access to information way more than before. So at the very beginning, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, platforms started introducing fact check to help people navigate all this information that you could find. Maybe information in the form of an article, or literally even people claiming things online, influencers in the specific case. And the fact check helped a lot, especially people who are not familiar with the internet. Like my mom, example again, my mom is old, but a lot of time I had to educate her about how to interpret information that she finds online. There is a lot of clickbait.
Wow, of course.
And again, in the form of articles or in the forms of influencers that can share anything and everything.
Yes.
I feel especially after the Netflix era, where a lot of documentaries, a lot of investigative journalism has gone and dug deep into the surface that everyone sees, that you cannot get away with everything. So people are more aware of how they should pay attention. Having said that, a lot of people still believe in everything they hear. They follow specific influencers, specific content creators blindly, and they would do everything that they say, which for me on one side is great, because you can see that there is an element of trust that you can still build online, which is very powerful. But on the other side, it's a bit worrying, because how do you really make sure that people adopt a critical thinking of what they hear and eliminate the wrong information?
Yes, definitely.
So does this mean like there is a change in their habits?
In the habits of
different generations?
So what I see my mom, and again, my mom, she represents the older generation. I am, in a way, I'm very tech savvy because I've worked with these companies.
Yes, of
so
course.
I always look for additional information. And you can see also the newest generation, they have access to so many platforms that before finding the information they follow, they really go across multiple sources. And this is a consequence of the change in the digital landscape, right?
Of course.
So maybe if you're looking for information about what to eat, where to go, you might even go on TikTok. The youngest generation, they go on TikTok to find videos about how to do things. At our time, it was on YouTube. Because it was the only place where you could find.
Discovery has changed.
You could find things on how to...
DIY was on YouTube, right?
DIY, how to use Excel, learning languages. Like before, there weren't even apps that you could use, and you were using these platforms. Now,
this is so true.
TikTok has taken over for the youngest generation when it comes to learning. Instagram is amazing for discoverability. These platforms have algorithms that are so powerful that they will feed you content that is very much in line with your interests.
Exactly.
So you get content that is relevant and you discover new things.
It's super tuned.
It is. But searching still remains a very important characteristics of the younger generations. Like we grew up with Google. Now, literally all platforms have become sort of search platforms. So searching, getting the information, trying to at least the truth is something that I see more into the younger generation than in the older one. Also because of what they've been exposed to and how savvy they are about technology.
It's safe to say that these new age social media platforms, specifically TikTok and Instagram, they're becoming more of a search engine rather than an entertainment consumption lifestyle platform. They're still there and they're doing that. But it's become a search engine, like you rightfully mentioned. And if we are to look at, the aspect of influencers specifically and them monetizing this, or brands monetizing this, companies building their social media presence, their brand building on these platforms, how can we say that in terms of searchability, in terms of placing themselves on this new age search engine, they can do better? Are there any specific examples that you have seen or that you have observed in your time across all these many, platforms and stuff that you have done, which is in fact very phenomenal? How would you say that a brand can leverage this to be more searchable, to reach the audience that they want to, and be more connected to the younger demographic as compared to whatever has been done before?
Okay. It's very simple, by the way. It's always been out there. You probably heard about SEO, right?
Yes, of course. So search engine optimization for our audience.
By the way, same thing on TikTok. If you understand what are the right keywords and you craft your content to make sure that you reflect what's trending, what are the areas of interest, you can surf on those trends. You can surf on those areas. So that part is very important. You really need to understand what the trends are. You need to understand what's the tone of voice and how people are talking about your brands or what you're trying to sell through your brands. So understanding the audience becomes, and the content that you're creating, they both become a very important component of how successful and relevant you're going to be on the platform.
Yes.
On the other side, there is also an element of trust. So imagine a few years ago, any influencers could go and have a partnership with a brand, talk about the brand in a way that, oh my God, this is the only product that I'm using for my hair. It's amazing. My hair was this short in 3 days, became so long, which obviously doesn't happen or hardly ever happens. And people would just, believe it. Then at some point, regulators have started introducing ways of handling this kind of partnership. So you must have seen a lot of in-partnership winners or paid partnership or hashtag ADV advertising. So I think using that element of transparency helps a lot because people will trust the content, will understand, okay, this is something that is being paid, and then they will make of the content what they prefer making. Searching on this platform, I was reading an article that was talking about, like you were mentioning, how TikTok and Instagram have become sort of search engine in themselves. Back in the days when I worked at Amazon, we actually found out that almost 15%, and this was back in the day, so the number for sure has changed, but 15% of all the searches about products to buy started on Amazon in the US, which is insane considering how many searches there are in the volume that we're talking. And now is even more. People use this platform to search, to get information because they want to seek a different opinion. One of the things that happened a lot on Google, especially when you start seeing the paid search results, is thinking, okay, this is paid for. Am I seeing really the most relevant information? Am I seeing the most useful one? Am I seeing the most trustworthy one? How can I trust? So they go to these platforms to search alternative information. There are some influencers that would rate and review products without doing any paid partnerships. And usually this would build trust, but at the same time, transparency always builds trust. Everyone knows there are brands who advertise, so no one is gonna point the finger at someone, provided that what's claimed and what's part of the the content is close to the truth.
For sure. And coming, like we have spoken a lot about truth, transparency, influencers being authentic in their presence, or anyone who's building a social media presence to be authentic in the form and factor that they're portraying out there. We talked about influencer marketing as well a while back, vis-a-vis the traditional marketing models that we have. Right now, I read somewhere that, influencer marketing is also experiencing a downfall to some level. And the pure reason for that is the authenticity element that you mentioned. A lot of them have paid sponsorships, a lot of them have brand deals because that's their way of monetization, right? If this is their career, that's how they're making money out of their career. And hence, UGC, or user-generated content as we call it, that's gaining more and more traction, and that's going to be like the next marketing model for the coming few years. Do you agree to it? And if you do, what do you feel has driven this drive for UGC? And how can UGC, or what do you see coming in the future? Like there'll be something that'll replace UGC as well at some point in time. So what's your prediction there?
The reason why we got into influencer marketing, by the way, is because a lot of these influencers were generating content that you defined the UGC. So the UGC, the generation of the content from an influencer's point of view or from a content creator, as we call them, is kind of like the first step into then seeking or being eligible to be part of a sponsorship for a brand. Either if you are a micro influencer or a larger influencer, you need time to build your audience, and the only way to build your audience is by putting content out there. Now, the ones that succeed the most are the ones that create a persona or portray a certain persona. So the consistency of the message, making people understand what you stand for, becomes very important. I personally, from where I'm standing or where I was standing before, always working with brands, trying to include influencers in what they were trying to do, because of multiple formats that you choose. So in some formats, if you're going for a TV advertisement, before you were choosing maybe like
Yeah.
football players or sportsmen, sportswomen. You were looking for actors.
Correct.
Now
Yeah.
you have influencers. Like in Italy, one of the largest influencers called Chiara Ferragni.
Yeah.
She's been talking about one of the P&G brands for years,
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
she integrated in her songs. Like it's a really strong way of
Yeah.
of
Of
doing
advertising.
advertising and reach, especially these big
100%.
influencers.
Yes.
So I don't think personally it's dead. I think the forms and shapes in which it comes to life have adapted to the way also the media landscape has adapted, the way
Yes.
content is consumed, and the way people interact with the platforms.
For
so
sure.
there are just different ways, and maybe what you define also as what you see sometimes there
Yeah.
are small partnerships or small product
Yes, yes,
placements that
yes.
are not fully disclosed, but
Yeah.
it's always there.
For sure. So there's always an element at play. So
There is
something
always an
under the
element,
layer. Under
which
the
by the way is not that wrong.
it isn't. Yeah.
I see before there were actors or there were celebrities that were part of this
Of course, yeah.
advertisement.
Yes.
What is the difference really? Like the
True.
way these people built their notoriety was different from the
Yes.
way influencers have built their own in two very different worlds, the cinema versus
Yeah.
the social platform.
Correct.
I believe even in the social platform, you give more accessibility to this world than the cinema or the previous
Yeah.
means like or channels would have done. So I think
Yes.
it's much more inclusive in the way to push this type
Exactly.
of things. So for
Yes.
me, influencer marketing, it's just there in a different
Yes.
shape.
Yes. It's
And-
been much more impactful, much more inclusive and diverse. So, we are evolving with that, like you rightfully mentioned. And I feel there's also a responsibility somewhere on the user or the consumer as to how aware are they.
Yes.
They being when, consuming these kind of content pieces or these kind of channels. So I feel there also needs to be a lot of pressure or education in terms of educating the consumer when using the social media platforms rather than
100%.
educating the influencer and putting restrictions there.
100%. Look, both things, by the way, because there must be limits on
Yeah,
both sides,
yes.
and there should be education on the side of consumers to have a critical approach to what you're watching.
Yes.
And by the way, the same way people can watch misleading content on a social platform, they can watch misleading content in
Of
the
course,
news
of
or
Exactly,
on
yeah.
TV, right?
Yeah, you don't know.
It's not about
is
the
there-
platform, it's
about
really
the
about
trust.
the person and how capable that person is to
Yes.
adopt a critical thinking
Yep.
towards what they're watching.
For sure.
So yeah, it's
Yes.
not really 100% about the platform. However, there should be restriction. Like it cannot
True.
be a Far West.
Oh, definitely.
There should be
Yes.
guidelines
Of
and
course.
there should be ways of limiting what's told about things, especially for categories that are a little bit trickier to handle, like drugs in sense of curing
Yes, the
diseases
pharma,
or even
yeah.
everything that has to do with health. I think in that case
Yes.
things should be even heavier
More sanctioned, yes.
regulated than
Makes
usually.
sense completely.
This actually brings me to two things. I mean, we spoke a lot about content creators. You answered what would make a content creator. But do you think currently there is still space for more content creators, or is it saturated? Because there is I mean there is different types of content that is being put out there, and you don't really like the relevance to the trust is how you really become. I mean, it brings me back to like marketing 101, right? You have a persona, you want to cater to that persona, there is the sales process that comes behind it, right? So this has changed, and now a marketeer, in order for them to really get a good job, they need to know digital marketing or else. And now actually you have digital marketing managers that are
Yes.
being hired, that has changed the way that the hiring process is for marketing. But is there still space for more content creators? Do you think?
Of course.
Yeah. Oh wow.
The more the society is evolving, the more content done in different way or different content is needed. Like the content that the Gen Z consumes is very different from the content that we consume. Of course, there are some things that can overlap.
Of course.
And there are things that overlap quite a lot, but there is a different way of living, different interests, different priorities.
Yeah.
So this change in society, in those who have to consume the content, makes sure that more people who have more things to say, different things to say, or the same things to say in a different way, still have a space for themselves.
Amazing.
So I see every day new content creators coming, to fame or rising to
Yes.
fame,
Yes.
because they just find that niche that is still that is
that
still
hasn't been
untapped, right?
fantastic.
That has not yet been explored. And by the time you think, oh, I've seen everything, someone else comes. Of course, there are, the evergreen, those creators that are massive, have always been there, like the Kardashian, they've been out there forever.
Yes, of course, it's a different.
And they cater across generations, by the way, because also they had people different age in their family. So they were able to speak with different ones, but they also have adapted the way they're communicating because of the consumption.
Yes.
So understanding where those new trends, the new niches are developing, it's fundamental for whomever wants to, raise to fame or get some notoriety to be, because that way they can cater for a need that currently is not met.
Of course. And then this brings me to another question while you're really talking. So, for example, using an example of an influencer marketer who's currently has good content, this goes into consumer behaviors as well, right? So you don't anymore sell on your website only, you can sell on different social platforms. So with that, how has the consumer behaviors changed, and are there different generations that are currently, for example, consuming in a different way? Like, would a Gen Z buy on Instagram versus somebody who would want to go and buy on the website? Like, I personally, sometimes if I want to really buy an opera ticket here in Dubai, I hear sometimes there are those scammers that really go online, and then if you want to access that website, right? So I want to make sure that if I go to the page on Instagram, I need to make sure it's the right website. So there is this thing that really it also puts a little bit of a fear, or just maybe being careful with that consumer behaviors as a millennial.
Absolutely.
So how has this changed, and how do you see this going?
Absolutely. And by the way, I just faced a couple of weeks back a wonderful scam. Honestly, I wanted to buy just as to say an homage to how good they faked the fixed chocolate website, the fixed chocolatier. And I was just like, this looks legit, but it's 40% off. They never do discount. So I started thinking, like you were saying, I didn't trust. I'm like, is the discount too much? They say fixed chocolatier, JLT. I know they only have one location. A lot of elements, by the way, to the average user of the platform, that was a very legit ad, and they would have bought anything, and they would have been scammed for thousands of dirhams. So there are a lot of scams out there, but what the platforms are trying to do is to put more controls into making sure that accounts can be reported, or even influencers out there can be reported. So in any platform where you're consuming content, you're given the tool by the platform to report content that you find suspicious. And on the other side, there are mechanisms that control this as well. And there are teams, huge teams, that are working towards making sure that the scams are reduced, that the fake advertising or the fake content is reduced. So there is work done on the platform side. Now, to go back to what you were asking about, how people are leveraging, this new way of
buying,
of commerce and buying, the live commerce. China is at the forefront. That's where everything started. Literally in China, sometimes you put products out there through influencers, and after 1 minute, everything is sold out.
Okay.
And they're used to that. It's something that started there, very familiar. In the US as well, there are a lot of consumers that adopt this behavior, and a lot of brands that on their side make this happen. If you go to the Amazon website in the US, you will actually find a dedicated section where influencers go and talk about products. And then you can buy the products from the live stream that the influencer is doing. So it's a very real-time way of selling and buying. Now, I don't know about you, but I can tell you for sure me, and I don't know about you because we're from different countries.
I knew you would say about the TV.
I'm sorry, it's been 40 years that
yes,
they're doing that.
They would go online and kitchen appliances.
And they're still doing, I remember an episode of Friends when Joey is trying to sell the this thing that you put over the counter.
Milk opener,
I'm sorry, isn't that live commerce? Because you can call the phone and they ship you the product and you pay.
Yes, that's
it's
so
exactly the same. It's just through a completely different platform. So if you really think about it, a lot of stuff that we see now that we are surprised and think, oh my God, this is the first time. It's
Not
just another
really.
cycle of
Yeah.
things that happened before.
So it's just a different platform.
Improved,
Yeah.
done better, understanding better how younger people, how different generations consume content,
Yes.
what are the different platforms that are best to channel
Yes,
that
yes.
content. But it's exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
My mom, she
It's
will still
different.
call and buy the stuff
Yeah.
on TV because they trust TV.
Yeah.
Yes.
You will be found dead before you buy something from a TV. You probably don't even have a TV, right?
No, I do have a television. Like I'm
As
a
furniture, as an ornament in the house.
She puts our logo on it.
She's like, I watch
Best
Netflix.
use case
It's like, I
ever.
watch Netflix, so that's why I have it. By the way, that's
No,
the
but
reason
I've
why I
had
have
a
it.
cable, FYI.
Yeah?
I've had a cable, yes. Just for a few years initially. Like, see, I'm a 2000 baby, right? So we are like a good mix of not so social media oriented, because we have had like the first few years which were more with like sparing the social media part of it. So that's when we experienced all of these novelties. But yeah, after that, social media took over.
Yeah.
It was completely out there. So like you mentioned, it's a repurposing, it's a
She
repackaging.
enjoys the Gen Z's discussion.
Like, it's the same
She's
thing.
smiling.
It's the same
But you know
thing.
what, and I think that's a privilege that we have, by the way,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
we literally saw it all.
Yes,
Like we saw when we had to talk to people,
Yes.
we were forced
Yeah.
to talk
Yes,
to people
yes,
face
yes.
to face,
Yeah.
otherwise there was no other way of
Uh-huh.
Yes,
communicating.
yes.
There were situations where you didn't know where people were
Yes.
because you cannot find, there's no
Yeah,
mobile
there's
phone.
no
Yes.
location. True.
All the way now that we're in a situation where you can find everything about
Yeah.
everyone.
It's
Yes,
scary
that's so
to
true.
a point,
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
honest.
makes sense.
It's too intrusive.
It's intrusive, but at the same time, I have a strong belief that if you want
Yeah.
to share that much, it's on you. It's your
Yeah.
responsibility to understand how much of your life you
Yeah.
want to share,
Yes.
because no one is obliging you to do
For
so,
sure.
right?
Yes.
So especially if you're an influencer, if you're a content creator, and you decide to pursue that career,
Yes, you.
there are implications.
For sure.
of
100%.
choosing that
Yeah, you're
career.
putting
Yes.
yourself out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like, you need to really make sure you're ready for whatever
comes your way.
Yeah.
out of it. I mean, I don't know. How do you at YouTube differ in bridging the generational gaps? Because you have consumption that is, I mean, my mom, she would tell me, I saw it on TikTok, and I was like, I currently like do not know how did she end up seeing it or what's really coming. Did my nephews and nieces probably add it to her? Like she said, yeah, I saw that on TikTok. So how do you at TikTok like make sure that you bridge this generational gap? And probably Krupa would be someone who would deep dive
Yes.
into the platform's usage, because I have like a few that I use, but tell us more.
Which ones
Yeah.
do you use?
So for music, I was on YouTube for a while until I went into Spotify, and I like it because there's no ads. I know we can do like the no ads on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I can really save my songs or someone else's playlist.
Yeah.
So this I enjoy. Instagram is there. I have Facebook for my aunts and family back home. So I don't remember the last time I really like recorded or added something. And they're very active on LinkedIn,
Of
given
course.
the leadership and also the business aspect of things.
You mentioned something when you were talking about Spotify and YouTube, and you
Yeah.
said, I know I can do YouTube for also without the ads, but Spotify is my preferred one. Now, if you think about YouTube before, at some point it was the only place you could go for music, right?
Yes.
And then the apps that are focused on music started coming out. Spotify, Angami, which is more widespread here in the region. And then YouTube, that before was in the forefront, started lagging behind.
Yes.
And this happens with a lot of platforms, by the way. Even if you, at a certain moment in time, are the leader, you have to face the truth that if you don't keep innovating, if you don't keep adapting
Yes.
to what the needs
For
of
sure.
your consumers are, you're going to start lagging
Of
behind.
course.
Yes.
So if you look at the platforms and the things that they have done, and again, are basically a repetition of what everyone else is doing.
Exactly.
Just in a
Exactly.
different way.
Yes.
So YouTube now has the premium.
Yes, yes,
without the-
Yes,
I
the
agree.
ads.
or people where especially younger generations, they like to see how the place looks like. They want to see videos in particular because they don't have time to go and read through things.
Yes.
If you notice, Google Maps in the recent years has started adding this capability of uploading videos, uploading photos.
3Ds.
You can like, so you have a gamification as a guide.
Yes,
you have a gamification now. You can move to the next level, so you can get more and more content. And obviously, the more visual content you put there, the higher the number of points that you get.
Yes.
So every platform is moving towards the other platforms in those aspects of the other platforms that have made the platform successful. Think about stories, think about Reels. Like Reels is nothing else but TikToks.
Yes.
The initial TikToks that you were doing were Reels.
That's Reels,
I'm lucky enough because now I work on live stream.
Yes, you work on live stream.
Right?
That's really tough.
It's tough and it's new, but in China, live stream has been out there for a long time.
Exactly.
And TikTok is one of the leaders. So working in a specific domain when the company that you work for is the leader it's a privilege, to be honest. Because you're not trying to catch up, you're trying to define the way things have to go. You're literally you're setting the trend, you're defining what's the right way of doing this. It's a privilege. But if you look at all the platforms, everyone is trying to do one thing, which is to respond to the needs, to the untapped needs or the highest needs of of people who are using them. In your case, music is convenience. You don't want to listen to ads.
Yes. And I, as a millennial, I don't know if you connect with me, is we like structure. So this app is for music. This app is for business. This whole you can do it all in one place doesn't yet work with my brain.
It doesn't.
When you enter a niche and you scale with that, people they expect the same thing from you. Right now, social media in a lot of ways is going against that basic principle because every app is becoming the same. LinkedIn now has stories. LinkedIn now has reels and stuff that's popping out. Although I never view it, I'm there for the textual content. But that's going against their main purpose. Instagram pretty much took a lot from what TikTok's model had initial days. WhatsApp has stories right now. So, every social media platform in some ways becoming the same. I feel just for a marginal value addition in some way. I don't know how will this play out in the future. Will everything be under one umbrella or what? That's something for the future to decide. It's very tough for us to be predicting that. But at the end of this, I have a very interesting question, which is apart from everything we just discussed. You come from a background of, social media creators. You have been with all these mega players for a good amount of time across your career. So if you are to be an influencer today or a content creator, let's put it simply there, how would you start? Like a simple 5-step or a 6-step process? And what would be your area of expertise or content creation that you feel is still a white space? It hasn't been tapped yet. And it's something that, I'll see you getting to 1 million followers.
Wow.
If I had the answer, I would just be on a beach in Bali, sipping a coconut water and making millions with my followers. The first thing that I learned across all of those big names that you were mentioning, etc., is always that everything that works is crafted around your customer, your audience. In the end, when it comes to the influencers, their customers are their followers, and you will grow a followership only if you manage to understand, what people need and how you build your community. There is a lot of consistency needed. Like you cannot expect, back in the good old days, that there were literally few influencers. You could count them on the finger of a hand. Now anyone has access, everyone is savvy, a lot of people know, and more actually people are savvy, not more and more people. So the competition is much harder. The work that you need to do in order to stand out is much harder. You need to work hard. It's not an easy job. It's not that you just go online and you have hundreds or thousands of people following you. You need to work on editing your content. You need to understand who the persona that resonates with the broadest audience is. And look, sometimes it's not necessary you need to be 100% authentic. Like if you are building a persona for yourself, it's the same as an actor. Like they will act in
What do
a
you
movie,
represent? What's your values? How
right?
do you
What
come out?
you need to portray that, and you need to be ready to put in the work. Like it's not something that that would happen for you. No one gives money for free, right?
Never.
And it doesn't happen even when it comes to the influencers anymore. It requires a lot of work, and I can see, by the way,
cluttered, yes.
these guys, they work long hours. When they partner with brand, they might have to be on set, they might have to create content, they might travel. And the travel is, people always think, oh, the travel is the fun part. It's very tiring and stressful, and you have to stay away from your friends and you have to stay away from your family. So nowadays, if I have to say one thing that really should be in the mind of people who want to get started is, if you choose to do this, it's a job. Now, it's a job that you might love, and then it becomes very pleasant to do, but it's still a job. You need to put the work, you need to put the consistency, and you need to put the study of understanding who you're talking to, how you have to talk to them, and how you make yourself different.
For sure. So
is it really the last question? No, come on.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not the last question. We have a great question for you that's coming. So for every guest that we bring in, we want them to look at the camera, and then your camera is that way.
That camera.
So, and we actually want to know what's your personal take on a personal level, whether it's work, whether it's just like outside of work. What's your commitment towards the Z-Way, the impact across generations? And the Z-Way doesn't only stand for Gen Zs. It's just that we believe that there is an impact that will go more and more across generations.
Fluidity.
So it's the fluidity of the generations. So what's your personal commitment to it? And we want you to share it with our people who are watching and people who will actually hear you
in the future.
Across generations.
And by the way, before I go into the camera, just to make you understand, because we were having a chat before you arrived, and I was telling Sumana, before I learned about you guys working on this project, I didn't question myself. And I think this is something that a lot of millennials don't do, questioning themselves, because you think in your head, I put on so much work, I studied so hard, I went through the schools, I did this. I know.
Yes.
And this really is an eye-opener, because it makes you understand that no, you don't know everything. And we are really full of judgment towards different generations, and it's not just towards the Gen Z, it's across multiple generations. So I'm happy about you guys putting together this project, because it's very useful at a personal level.
We are glad.
Now, speaking to the camera, I have to tell what my commitment is.
Yes.
My commitment is mostly about learning and really making sure that I break those barriers that I built for myself, thinking that we are know-it-all, that my generation has seen it all, has done it all, knows better than others. Because especially working in marketing, you have to face an evolving profile of consumers. The market that you are selling your product to is not what it used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yes.
And the only people that can see it without any filters or without any preconceptions are people who are living it. So getting closer to younger generations is very important, and especially people who are working with me. I have to say, for me, it was a huge surprise to discover how different from whatever I was imagining they are. I thought I would have found people who are lazier, who are putting first themselves and putting first their free time, when actually I found extremely hard workers who are very flexible, very problem-solving oriented, rather than creating hurdles, like they try and find solutions. So my personal commitment is to discover more about them, is to learn more from them, and make sure that whatever I can do to capitalize on what I've learned to make them grow is there, so that we can, build new generations of leaders equipped with all of their talent, but also everything we had to go through.
Wow.
And now I'm 300 years old.
Wow. No,
I sound so old.
No, but it's just also
I'm living with a king.
Your vulnerability, and also wanting to learn from them and also teach them, right? Because you have to really meet
there has to be a balance.
Halfway. There has to be a balance with your learning.
But honestly, I'm learning a lot.
Of course.
As you would expect, TikTok, there are a lot of young people at TikTok. So at the beginning, it was like, what can they bring literally, and you realize no,
There's a lot,
if you
yeah.
open
The innovation
if
and
you
the
keep your
creativity
mind
is there.
open, you can really absorb a lot from them and
Yes.
learn a lot from them. But it's all a matter of how you
Yeah.
put yourself towards them,
So
right?
you can be
it's
fluid.
Both, yeah, it's fluid and it's both ways too. Like, honestly, I don't see a point where us as a younger generation can also hold those labels against whoever's teaching us, because their methods can be different. And I can say that from personal experience too. Like, she is one close millennial that I work with. I have a lot of other millennials in my life. My elder sister is a millennial. So I see that entire perspective, because your experiences are different. The values that you guys have grown up with are different. The world that you have seen is different. So, all those triggers,
300 years old living with a cane.
all those triggers are very different. So they shape a different human being. So even we as a younger generation need to be open, and that's something that we have been very vocal about in across the platform, across the Z-Way, that it's across generations. Not from you to us, but from us to you as well.
Let me tell you something, and off the record,
Yeah.
so you understand what I learned as taking care of yourself. Like our generation is like you work as
Yes.
hard as you can. Like you work.
Grinding.
And not you grind, like literally you go all in it, because if you're failing at work, like you feel a failure about everything that happens. I love the fact that the younger generations really make a close and net distinction between this is me at work, this is what I have to do, and this is me in my private life, which is extremely important. So one of my colleagues, and this is the part that has to go off the record, because if someone from
Maybe
my
we
office,
do it from after the recording.
we do it after.
Yeah.
Okay,
No
Okay.
worries.
That would be
With,
nice.
yes, so with that, we want to thank you guys for viewing and tuning up with us. We want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
And if
me.
you ever see Sara in Bali on a beach with a sipper in her hand, she's become a travel influencer, guys.
Because I have a million followers.
We have a
plus.
million followers here.
She's gonna think about that question.
So now I'm gonna go back and put in the work.
Fantastic.
Yes, but anyway, thanks a lot. Thank you guys, and thank you for being here. And let's create impact across generations.
Thank you.
Thank you.